We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
I still have a dream.
There are many sources of energy available.
Everything is energy. My God, do we need this or what? Free our mind.
Corporations have taken over the world.
Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
Hello, you're very welcome once again to the Irish Side of the Moon. This is Michael at the microphone for interview number 80. And this week's guest is Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. USAWatchdog.com, analysing the news to give you a clear picture of what's really going on. Greg Hunter has been in the news business dating back to the 80s at least, and he's worked at local level, national level, most recently CNN, before departing to set up USAWatchdog.com. We'll be talking a little bit about his background in news and his experience in news a little bit, but primarily this week's interview is about finance, money, debt, all of those things. This is a passion of Mr. Hunter's. I think you'll be able to pick that up once we get to the interview, so sit back and enjoy number 80 of the Irish Side of the Moon. And I'm on the line now with Greg Hunter. Greg, a pleasure to talk to you. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing very well. Looking forward to this. Your passion shines through, so I am looking forward to our chat. But before we talk about USAWatchdog.com, before we talk about what you're at the moment and the stories that you're so passionate about, let's dive a little bit into your formative years. Let's find out what makes you tick, as it were. Early days, what got you started on journalism? What kind of got you looking in the direction? When you were a teenager, what were you interested in? Were you always a news follower, or was it something that came out of the blue? What set you on this particular path?
In college, I wanted to be a game show host, and I actually took trips out to California, and when I was my early years. To Goodson Todman, I had interviews out there, and I'm so glad I didn't get the job, because I would have been, if I would have gotten a job doing that, I would have been miserable. And I ended up kind of stumbling into news. I got a friend of mine who got me into the news business, and I just did it just to get into TV, because I wanted to do entertainment TV. I thought, well, that's kind of what the news business is now, entertainment TV. But anyway, so I early on I kind of backed into news, and then I did entertainment TV for years. I was a host for PM Magazine, a show called PM Magazine.
And that was so we're up as far as 1980 to 1980. That was that was your 1980s.
Yeah, in the 80s I did I did PM Magazine, where I was a host in different cities around America. And then I ended up getting a job in Greensboro, North Carolina, and the whole entertainment thing ended, and I got a job doing 2 Wants to Know. It's Channel 2, and where I did investigative work. And I said, okay, if you want me to do it, I'll do it, but let's do the real deal. Let's do the real thing. And one of the first big stories, everybody laughed at me because I came from entertainment. But really, what doing entertainment stories were a lot like doing investigative stories, in that you'd always did little pieces of stories, little chunks. News stories, general news stories, general assignment news stories that have a perp walk, or you have a drought. You go to one location, you shoot your whole story. But if you do a profile on somebody, you don't go to one location. You fly in their company jet. You go watch them play golf. You go see them home with their wife. You see them do certain things. You do entertainment type profile. Well, the investigative work is similar in that you have pieces of stories to make a whole story, as opposed to going out and doing the event news. At any rate, I started doing 2 Wants to Know. My first big story was I broke a nationwide story that was on the front of USA Today newspaper about General Motors paint concerns. Now, it wasn't a safety issue, but basically the car was valueless, and it made the front page of USA Today, and that the cars were peeling, and they had a video, and they were painting almost everything they made. And it was a huge story. Ford was doing the same thing. You know, they'd only paint your car if you came in and complained to the dealership loud enough or long enough. They'd say, yeah, well, okay, it's a defect in the paint. But it was a nationwide story. I thought, wow, this is powerful. The only person I have to take crap from is my boss. I don't have to kiss ass anymore.
Cool.
Right?
Yeah.
So it was. So I started doing that for several years there. Then I moved my way up, and I got a job at, another bigger TV station in Florida. And then I went from Florida to Good Morning America. Mm-hmm. And then I went from Good Morning America to CNN, and I worked there. I worked in New York for about. I lived in New York for about 10 years. Worked in New York for about 9. And then I started. And that all's kind of going away. The networks. I don't mean going away. I maybe more correct is it's morphing. It's changing. It's like the guy who was doing the arranging the Facebook protest in Egypt, who's saying, hey, they used to own the networks. The government used to own the networks, used to own all avenues of media, and now with the internet, they don't. And so, that's why media is decentralizing. It's the networks really don't get it. I don't know how your networks are. They have a pretty girl or a pretty guy with nice hair, or a nice girl that looks good in a fuzzy sweater, and they're so in the 50s and the 60s. I mean, I don't think they realize what they can get if you just type in a few key words, pretty girl into the internet. Pretty girl doing something. You can find all the pretty girls and pretty guys you want on the internet.
Yeah. You don't need them on the news, of course.
You don't need them on the news. I mean, yes, I guess if they're attractive, it's not their fault, and if they're smart, I wouldn't, don't get me wrong. But that's so 50s. I mean, I worked at the network, so I understand. And they literally would pick people based on the way they looked, and then they would get producers, and they would, you don't have to know anything. Just, we'll get producers to make you look good. We just like the way you look. We like your age. We like the way you look. It's so stupid.
It's exactly what, yeah, but it's what happens, and yeah, I want to come back to that again and come back to what kind of motivated you to take the jump to do your own thing. A couple of more questions, all those years, through the years, like we say, go back to the 80s and 90s. What type of stories do you respond to yourself most personally when you're working on a particular type of story that really gets you going, gets you passionate? What does it tend to be? Is it something to do with the consumer rights? Is it to do with the corporations, finances? What really floats your boat?
Well, when I was doing purely investigative work, now I'm doing the economy and politics. But when I was doing investigative work, I always did it, looked at for the victim. And I had a line into my office, even in local TV, I would listen to every phone call, and I would look at every email. And because you never know what you can get. My boss said, "Are you answering all these people?" I said, "No, I can't. I mean, it's unbelievable. It's like saying if you want every piece of trash picked up on the street, that could happen, but it's just going to cost you X amount of money. So I just want to get the stuff that's could cause disease, And so I would look for really good victims, really good people who have really good stories to tell. And then I'd do the same thing at the networks. I would do nothing but I acquire stories. I had producers to produce stuff. And I figured out early on that, well, I don't want to be doing stupid stuff that my boss comes in, because when you fail, then your boss picks the story, and then you fail, and then they go, oh, wow, you suck. So I was always pushing the ideas out the door. I was always having ideas that I would do that they would. I didn't want my bosses to think. I'd rather plan my own mission. It's, you always want to be the guy planning your own mission. Remember the raid on Entebbe? Remember that years ago? And then there was the Americans had about the same time frame, not exactly the same time frame, but within a few years apart. The raid on Entebbe, where Idi Amin, decided to take a plane load of Jews. Bad idea. And they went down there and got everybody out. I think Ehud Barak's brother died in the thing, I think. But only one person died on the Israeli commandos, and they got everybody out. The Americans did a mission where they were going into Tehran, where they held the hostages for 444 days, and they just ended up, they didn't get even close to Tehran. It ended up in a big mess. 8 people got killed. They didn't even get close. They weren't even shot at. You know what the difference is in the missions? The mission for the Israelis were the commandos actually planned the mission. And the mission for the Americans didn't plan their mission. Central Command, people who were not on the mission, planned it, and it failed. And so you always want to plan your own missions. So the stories I always picked were stories that I knew I could pull off, and I knew I could do somebody some good.
Okay, now that brings us kind of to USA Watchdog, because that may be answering my next question. Because the most obvious thing to me, when you look at your bio and you look at your considerable track record working in the mainstream, and now you see that you're doing your own thing, it begs the question: did you find yourself frustrated? Did you find yourself unable to get some stories out? Did you find yourself unable to get some things said? And is that why you're now doing what you're doing?
Michael, you can look on my website in my About section, and in March of 2008, and it was my reoccurring theme, because I started doing economic news, and I started applying my investigative work to economic stories. Now, this isn't past the smells does. This is, all an investigative reporter does is look at data. What does the data say? What does the data say? That's really a dot connector. What do the dots say? Connect the dots. What does it say? That's really all an investigative reporter does. It's based on what can you prove. There's a lot of people would call me for stories as an investigative reporter. I say, wow, it's a great story. How do I prove it? So when it came down to economy, the things that Bernanke was saying in 2007, the subprime crisis is going to be contained. The economy is going to get better. And I'm thinking, I'm reading on the internet for and getting qualified sources, good people who have credentials that weren't seeing the light of day. And the stuff I was finding out, I was saying on the air, all the banks are in trouble. They're all in trouble. In March of 2008, that was one of the things I was saying on the air, talking about how we're going to have a hyperinflationary depression and things are going to be bad, and whoever's the president for 2012 in the United States is going to have a rough time. Well, I think Obama is going to have a rough time in 2012. I'm not for or against him. I'm just telling you he's going to have a hard time. Yeah. But the long and short of it is, with all that, is that in March of 2008, I was saying, hey, one of my recurring things, all the banks are in trouble. 2 weeks later, we don't need you anymore. They don't tell you not to say anything at the networks. They don't tell you, don't say this. They just keep the people who won't. I remember having
it's an unspoken rule. It's like it's an unspoken rule, and if you learn to play the game, if you learn to play the game.
I was having arguments with the people who, quote, did finance and business news. And I was right and they were wrong. I was right and wrong. And I don't mean to... And I thought, if I'm this right and they do this for a living, what the hell's going on? I remember having an argument with Jerry Willis, actually, at Exchange, who was one of the big poobahs at CNN. And this was in 2007. And she says, how can you say that the mortgages, all these houses are going to go sour? My sources say, the subprime thing is going to be contained. I said, well, your sources have skin in the game. And my sources say it's going to affect all stratifications in all houses. Well, I was right. How could I be right? She still got a job in the mainstream media. They must want that. And
there is that thing of the spin, the positive spin and the spin for certain vested interest that the mainstream media puts on news.
Well, we remember this stupid thing that they started out, green shoots, which was, Nouriel Roubini called it, just shortly after Nouriel Roubini called it yellow shoots or brown shoots, they stopped doing it. Then they keep all this chanting of recovery. It's, what? And when there's no recovery, finally Time Magazine comes out and says, what recovery? The big cover story. Now they've changed the language where it's transitory. It's a soft spot. It's temporary. It's all horseshit. We are in deep, deep crap in the world, and here's the overarching thing that people don't understand, and this is it. There are $600 trillion in derivatives, over-the-counter derivatives. They are debt bets. This is why we've thrown all this money at this, and it hasn't gotten better. This is why a country like Greece, and they were talking about this, the last couple of days. You got to pass this austerity plan. You have to do it. You have to. The whole world. Huh? What? How can Greece tumble down the whole world? Because all these dominoes of debt bets, over-the-counter derivatives, interest rate swaps, credit default swaps, that's insurance, mortgage-backed securities. That's the reason why Fed is holding interest rates down. It's $600 trillion. Some people say it's over a quadrillion. It's 1,000 trillion. And you think the world GDP is 60 trillion right now, okay? So let's say 10% of this stuff is bad, okay? 60 trillion is the world GDP. Let's just say 10% is bad, or 10% of the 600 trillion is bad. Well, that's the world GDP. It's everything everybody makes in a year is sour. I think it's worse, way worse than that. That's what all this austerity thing is all about. And they can't just print all the money for the $600 trillion in debt bets. And here's why it's so important that people need to understand how this thing is so, because somebody wrote me on my site and said, how can Greece take the whole world down? I mean, am I not going to be able to get, good olive oil? I mean, how is that going to take the whole world down? And I told them it's about, people understand how massive this is. And what the bankers have done is said, even to you in Ireland, is said, if you don't have austerity, if you don't raise your taxes and cut all your stuff and cut everything, now granted some things should be cut, but still, but if you don't do this, the whole world will. What do you mean though? They've screwed up so bad that if they don't do these things that they want us to do, which is big tax increases, big cuts, but nobody talks about the bondholders, the bankers taking a cut. Oh, we can't do that. We need to have our bonuses. I love what the people in Ireland did. They went, no, you're going to take a haircut. Sorry.
Oh, Iceland. Iceland, you mean, yeah.
Iceland. I mean,
sorry,
I said Ireland. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Iceland. I'm surprised that, one of the most compelling things, I put it on my site, it was a guy from the Corps, one of the lead guy from the Corps.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Jim Corr, we know of him.
Oh, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He had it so down. I mean, I'm surprised that you don't vote all these bums out over in Ireland and redo your deal and say, hey, you know what? This is a sour deal. This is a bad deal. Why should the Royal Bank of Scotland be bailed out for doing stupid stuff? It would be better. I said over here in 2009 that we ought to initiate the default option. In other words, take these banks to receivership. Don't put them out of business, but, Jamie Dimon, you're fired. Ken Lewis, you're fired. John Mack, you're fired. You fire all these guys. Fire the entire. We have to pay bonuses because of talent. The talent. Oh, you mean the talent that wrecked the whole world? That talent? That talented group of people? You have to pay them because they're talented. The top talent, the talent that wrecked the whole world, the greedy bastards that wrecked the whole world. You have to, and they're still getting bonuses. These guys wrecked their Chevy, and then they won a new Mercedes. This is unbelievable. But back to the over-the-counter derivatives. Here's why this is so insidious and so terrible. And what I think the powers that be want is to get this back the way it was before. Just get it back the way it was before because it worked so well. And that is this. If you go buy a bushel of corn from the Chicago Board of Trade, they can't put beans in it. They can't put cups of water in it. They can't give you a half a bushel for a bushel. Why is that? Because that's a publicly traded market. There are rules, regulations, guarantees. There's also price discovery. Oh, what are soybeans this week? Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Every minute of every business day they price, and right now it's 1346.55213. For a bushel. Price discovery. Now, let's go over to the over-the-counter derivatives. I remember being in CNN in 2008 and walked into a meeting with, CNN, Money.com and Fortune Magazine and all these guys and said, hey, over-the-counter derivatives are roughly $600 trillion, a little more than that then. It's $600 trillion. Where is that traded? Everybody just got quiet. I said, not a trick question. Where is $600 trillion in over-the-counter derivatives and things like interest rate swaps, mortgage-backed securities, credit default swaps, all this crap? Where is that traded? Silence. Wow, we're missing a big story. It's a private market. Over-the-counter means from me to you. No regulations, no guarantees, no oversight, no price discovery. Oh, these derivatives are hard to price. You bet they're hard to price. They're hard to price because there's no public market. Do you see anybody make a public market with all this financial reform? Is there any public market over there in Ireland or over in London or Germany or in France or United? Is there a public market for derivatives?
So
no.
Kept behind.
Why? Yeah. You know why? Because if they had a public market, we had price discovery, you'd find out that your $100 bond it's only worth like 40 cents on the dollar. It's only worth 15 cents. This one's worth nothing. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. $600 trillion. How much of a loss do you have to crash the whole? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, this is the message. Let's talk about USA Watchdog.com. This is the message again, saying this kind of stuff, as you say yourself, CNN not really receptive. Tell me a little bit about USA Watchdog. The slogan, analyzing news, give you a clear picture of what's really going on. That's the slogan. What was the genesis? What was the idea? Where did this come from? Where did USA Watchdog.com come from?
Well, I wanted to be a TV show years ago, and I took it to ABC, and it wasn't USA Watchdog at the time. It was the Hunter Report or something like that. I don't remember what it was. But I wanted it to be a TV show. I wanted it to be a hard-hitting investigative show, like 2020 used to be, like 60 Minutes used to be.
Used to be, yeah.
I can't believe 60 Minutes allowed Ben Bernanke on the air to basically say, we're not printing money when, the comedy show over here called The Daily Show had him on a year earlier saying, well, essentially we're printing money. And 60 Minutes couldn't get that right? You got to be kidding me, right? 60 Minutes did a story about the whole mortgage-backed securities and housing sham, right? And you think about this now, we're back to these over-the-counter derivatives, securities. Over in America, when you sign a promissory note, people think they pay for a house for 30 years and a 30-year mortgage. No, you don't. When you sign a promissory note, you paid for that house. That's what they're supposed to use for securitization. That's what all this robo-signing was all about. They were phoning it up. They were making documents. They were forging names. They were forging loan paperwork, okay? Now, imagine this is 60 Minutes doing a story now with, talking about, they lay out the story of fraud. They actually had this woman called Linda Green. They actually call these documents fraudulent just by saying they're Linda Green documents because she signed all kinds of stuff. She was they said she was a bank vice president. She sat in some room signing Linda Green on everything they stuck in front of her for hours and hours every day. Other people did the same thing. So 60 Minutes does this story. And they ended up at the end of the story talking to Sheila Bair, who was the head of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. That's the insurance for the banks. And she says, well, we need another government program to pay people to sign new promissory notes because they don't have the promissory notes. Now, let's back up here. You created a security. The promissory notes is payment for the house. Okay, so that's the securitization. So you made trillions of dollars in securities. And what did you securitize if you didn't have the notes, if you had to do fraud? Oops. But the end of their story was, we need to have another government program. This is 60 Minutes. So what's the genesis of USA Watchdog? I used to work in their houses. It's not like, oh, well, you're just a guy from local TV. No. I used to work there. No, I work with the lawyers. I work with your people. I work with standards and practices. I work with legal. I did what you did. I know what you do. Okay? And for them to be doing stuff like that is either they're just stupid, numbers, or it's intentional. And I don't know what it is, but I'll tell you one thing. People don't understand. They're not really grasping the enormity of this problem globally. The housing boom in America didn't just happen in America. The housing boom happened globally. It's the biggest housing boom ever in the history of the world. It's huge. This is according to Robert Shiller, who does the Case-Shiller report here in the Case-Shiller Home Price Index in America. The Professor Shiller at Yale University. It's the biggest housing boom in history. It will be the biggest bust in history. You have not seen the end of the housing bust in history. This is why the Federal Reserve is holding interest rates down, mortgage rates here in America, down to around or below 5%. They're freaking out. They don't want to see the mortgage-backed securities derivatives lose any more value than they are going to lose. If interest rates go up, people just say, F it, I'm out. Interest rates in America are 5%. They should be at 8 or 9% now. They should be there right now. People ought to be putting 20% down. People ought to be paying a lot more money. Anyway, the genesis of USA Watchdog, back to that, is people need help finding out the truth so they can make decisions in their lives. That's what I'm supposed to be doing as a journalist.
And the internet is very much, you're a great example of that, but do you feel people are turning more and more to the internet to find out what's going on behind the headlines?
Well, I try to write it so you can act on it. I try to not tell you. I did something the other day about the Greek thing, about the military being upset and that they may have a coup. I said this is a rumor and I don't have it. That's something rare I do. I rarely put something up without a good source. They had some quote. Of course, the people on the internet don't know how to quote somebody. They didn't say it was General, Papapo from Greece. They didn't say it was General so and so. They just put the quote out there. I don't even know if it's true or not. Although it sounds plausible, and I thought, well, I'm going to go ahead and put this out and say it's a rumor. I'll say what it is, because the internet is my damn site, and It may be somebody who, I think it may be true. But I did say what it was. But what I try to do, if you read my stuff, I have quotes, I have links. You can look back at what I did, what I wrote, who I quoted, where I quoted it from, so people understand, what it was doing. That's exactly what I was doing at CNN. I was picking apart the messages coming out of Washington, picking apart are we in a recession? In 2007, I said, you can't knock out autos. Autos were doing terrible in America. Banks were doing terrible in America. They were all insolvent at the time. I said they were all in trouble. Well, hell, they were all insolvent, according to the Treasury Secretary. And housing was terrible. So you can't knock out autos, the banks, and housing and not be in a recession. We're in a recession. If we're not in one already, we're gonna be in one. And, of course, that's bad for advertising, and, hey, you can stay on that. We're all supposed to act surprised. And the media in the meltdown said, I mean, watched media shows, wow, nobody saw this coming. Bullshit. Excuse me. There are many people on the Internet saw it coming. Many qualified analysts and people who do analysis, people who with real credentials, not just, Bob's blog. I mean, people with real credentials. There's a guy I quote all the time, John Williams, and CNN actually used him a few times, but then they quit doing it because the truth is, I don't know whatever it is, but he's been on many different mainstream media sites and otherwise, and has a track record that you can go and figure and look back at what he said, and then look at today and say what happened. And he's got a great track record. Named John Williams. He takes government numbers and does the reporting for GDP, gross domestic product, for unemployment, for inflation, and does them before all the gimmicks and all the accounting gimmicks that make things look better than what they are. All the accounting gimmicks that they do make things look better than what they are. For example, in America, the true unemployment rate, if you did it the way Bureau of Labor Statistics did it before 1994, is over 22%. I'm sure in Ireland they have the same kind of, you pay people to do statistics in your government, and you basically pay people to lie to you.
Well, you can do anything with statistics. I mean, you can, I was aware of the fact in America that they changed the setup, whatever. But yeah, you can skew figures, you can mess with figures, you can put them to say almost anything. So it's not unheard of.
But the thing is, it's when you pay your own government to lie to you. And that's the thing that over and over again here in America, they would say what the unemployment rate was, they would say what the inflation rate was, and I would always say, well, if you did unemployment the way it was in 1994 earlier, it's this. If you did inflation the way it was done in 1980 without all the hedonic measuring and geometric smoothing and all the other counting gimmicks that make things look better than what it is in reality, I always would say the real inflation rate, the real deal. And I think everybody in the mainstream, I don't know what journalism school they went to. Oh, so you're supposed to say exactly what the government says without question. That's supposed to be the real thing. I mean, certain things, statistics, sure, you can't question every single thing, but when it's so obvious when they say the inflation rate is, in America, they say it's 3.2%, which is absurd. It's unbelievably absurd. I'm sure they're saying the inflation rate in Ireland is really, really low when everybody in the street goes, no, it's not low. It cost me a hell of a lot more to live this year in Ireland than it did last year.
Yeah, people on the street, have a very different story.
But what the government, no, I guarantee you, your government numbers that come out of your ministry or whoever it is, don't match what's going on the street.
Of course. Okay, stepping away for a second, just for a moment. Looking at other stories, looking at the situation in Yemen, you've said that it's the most underreported story of the moment.
Oh, God, yes, it is.
What's the thinking? Okay, let's look at the mainstream. Look at why is certain things like this, why are they not putting it out there? What's the benefit of keeping it quiet?
I don't know if it's because they think international doesn't do as well as domestic. If you look at their story selection, the stupid Casey Anthony thing, and Anthony Weiner with his pictures, he's sent to people. It's just hours. I look at the story and think, oh my God, they're doing a live shot. They got people following them around. They've committed crews.
Surely
unbelievable expense
that's the most important story of the year.
Yes, and this Casey Anthony, this stupid Casey Anthony thing. I'm sorry, this woman allegedly killed her kid. I feel sorry for the child. I don't want to know about it. It's just some story in Florida. Doesn't affect my life. I'm sorry. I don't need to know about it at the level that I'm hearing about it, and that takes away resources, because the networks don't have unlimited resources. That takes away resources, time, talent, and all kinds of other things of stories that will affect my life. And let me tell you, if Yemen falls to Al Qaeda in or 2 years or whatever, I mean, all the signs are Yemen's going to go Al Qaeda, and so on the Arabian Peninsula, you'll have Al Qaeda sharing a home with the I think it's the second biggest now, because I think Russia's number one, but with one of the world's biggest oil producers on the Arabian Peninsula, Saudi Arabia. And, if they don't even have to take over Saudi Arabia, if they start using Yemen as a launching pad, and they start having cross-border fighting, and they go into their refineries, and they start blowing up refineries, or they go to the Gate of Tears down there and try to start sinking ships, or try to start shooting RPGs into ships. So Gate of Tears is only 20 miles wide. It's south of the Red Sea. You could go, 20 miles. You could go out there in a John boat, in a skip, with an RPG and try to shoot it into the hull of an oil tanker. I mean, who knows? So, Al-Qaeda blew up the Cole there in Yemen, the USS Cole. And so that is a huge story. I mean, forget all the other ones. Forget Gaddafi and Egypt and Syria and Bahrain. But Yemen is, we're talking about a Al-Qaeda state. So that's and I don't know why it's underreported, but that has huge implications for everybody in the world. If Saudi Arabia goes down, or if they start being attacked, you'll see, I don't know what petrol prices are over there, but you'll see oil per barrel, Brent in U.S. dollars is $120 a barrel, which I don't understand why Brent is so, 115 is so much higher than West Texas. West Texas is about 92 or 3 or something like that. So, but there's a huge spread between Brent and West Texas. And anyway, but you'll see your petrol prices skyrocket. It could be just, crushing before they get that under control, which would start a world war. There's no way they let Al-Qaeda just, move in and start, attacking Saudi Arabia. So that's a huge story. That's a huge story with worldwide implications.
Agreed. Okay. Another story, again, which has gotten some coverage, but it'd be interesting to get your thoughts on the whole Japanese situation. Are we getting the whole story, do you think?
I do not think we are getting the whole story, no.
No.
I think unless you have a Geiger counter and you're a nuclear engineer or a nuclear physicist, and there have been interviews of Fukushima being as worse than Chernobyl. Well, if that's the case, there's going to be a big swath of Japan that will be uninhabitable for a billion years. Japan has physically affected the world economy in that parts have slowed down out of Japan because of it was such a devastating earthquake. Now they're rebuilding, and the Japanese are industrious people, but their government and their media is notorious for underreporting and not reporting and reporting things in a positive light. That they're notorious for doing that kind of stuff, and I think people really need the real truth for them to make decisions. So I think it's way underreported, and I think that it's not going to get any better.
I think you hit on something very important there. I mean, the idea of reporting something in a positive light, taking it away from Japan, looking globally, there's so much power in the mainstream. I mean, that may answer a lot of the questions that we have with regard to why certain things don't get reported and why certain things get over-reported. The power that you wield, because people are turning more and more to the internet, but still the mainstream is the mainstream for the moment. It's dwindling, but it's still in a position of power.
It's still in a position of power, you're correct.
Yeah, and you influence so much of the population by what you put out there.
Well, yes, and I actually was on the set of CNN, and one of the anchors, John Roberts, who now works at Fox News, I can't remember the report. It was, I don't know what it was about. It was, I can't remember exactly what it was about. It may have been about the economy. I don't know. But after the report, we go to the break, and he says, "Are you ever worried about causing a panic?" And nothing that wasn't like, "Hey, you said something that was incorrect. Are you sure that fact is correct?" No. He took my story at face value and said it was true. basically. And his only comment was, "Are you ever worried about causing a panic?" Hey, it's not my job to worry about causing a panic. It's my job to tell the truth and to back it up with sources. And so, the things I was saying about the economy were spot on. If you could have got your money out of the stock market, if you could have bought gold, I don't tell people what to buy. I'm not a market caller. People have asked me, should I buy now? Should I sell this? Should I be the stock market? Should I do that? Listen, I think you should lighten up on the stock market. I think you should have precious metals. I think you should get your house in order. I think you ought to pay down debt. I think you should buy a new set of tires for your car. Some people shouldn't be buying gold and silver. They should be buying a new set of tires for their car and stocking up on some food because it'll never be cheaper. Not that there won't be any food. I just think there's going to be big inflation. Now, that's the theme that I've been saying since I have my site, is that there's one thing you can count on, is count on inflation. And, boy, that's exactly what has happened. Now, some people think there'll be hyperinflation. The world's in a very tenuous situation, and that, have all these dollars floating around the globe. There's $12 trillion, according to John Williams, shadowstats.com, $12 trillion in liquid investments in U.S. bonds and dollars. And a U.S. bond is only a promise to pay back in dollars. It's not some, special thing where you open a case and, gold light comes out of it. It's basically a dollar instrument. It's a dollar. So you're giving your euros or your dollars or your yen today, and you get paid back in some future dollar amount. And the future dollar amount, the interest rate, has to equal inflation plus a profit for you to, make any money. Bill Gross sees no good in treasuries. The PIMCO fund, which is the largest mutual fund in the world, the biggest bond fund in the world, has no treasuries. They are not in the most liquid market in the world. That, to me, is a ominous sign for the dollar. That's dollar negative. And I think the whole world could get, really hurt with this. If the dollar loses value rapidly, you could see some major dislocations in many, many different things around the globe.
Yeah, precarious house of cards. On that note, we're going to take a very short break here on the Irish Side of the Moon. We're talking to Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. Stay with us. We're just going to play our stinger, and we'll be right back for more of this conversation. Thank you.
You're listening to The Irish Side of the Moon. You can hear our new episodes every Monday on radiomedia.org and irishsideofthemoon.blogspot.com. You can also download episodes from iTunes, Stitcher, and many other sites. You can follow us on Twitter, you can join our Facebook group, and if you're already in the group, don't forget to invite your friends. If you have any ideas for future guests on the show, send an email to shane@theirishsideofthemoon.ie. We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment.
You're back. It's the Irish Side of the Moon. I'm in conversation with Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. We've talked a little bit about your background. We've talked about PM magazine through the 80s. You worked with CBS, ABC 6 years, up to CNN 2005. And now USA Watchdog, doing it yourself. You're online. You're free from any sort of editorial punishment or interference. Getting stories covered the way you want them covered. We've talked about a few things. We've talked about the finances of the world. We've talked about Yemen. We've talked about the Japanese nuclear situation. Fukushima, yeah. Coming back for a moment to the finances and just chatting a little bit there in the break. The phrase debt slaves came up in conversation. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, this is what's going on with the world. And what should happen when you make a bad loan? You make a bad loan. It's like wrecking your car, okay? You wreck your car, you got to pay. You got to pay deductible, you got to take a hit, or if you have insurance, you pay your deductible and you get another car and you have to pay higher premiums. But this is not what the bankers are doing. The bankers, with all this pool of derivatives, this is why if Greece defaults, it could cause the whole world to go under. I mean, actually, we're saying that in published reports. There's some stuff on my site. Why does Greece affect the whole world? Because it's a daisy chain of these over-the-counter derivatives, these debt bets, and it's in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. Are they all sour? No, but they don't all have to be sour for it to cause problems in the world. If just 10% is bad of the $600 trillion, that's what the Bank of International Settlements says. If just 10% are bad, and I think it's way higher than that, that's $60 trillion. That's the entire GDP of the world. Some people think it's more than 1,000 trillion, a quadrillion of these debt bets. Because after all, there are no rules, there are no regulations. Oh, what makes a good derivative? I actually talked to somebody graduated from business school out of in New York. I said, what makes a good derivative? I said, let me tell you, anything you can get Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch to throw AAA on. And she went, that's right. Isn't that frightening? There are no standards. There are no guarantees. There are no price discoveries. So what they've done is they've got this big ball of junk in the world. And then they come to populations like the ones in Ireland, in America, in Greece, and wherever, in Portugal, in Spain, and say, oh, you have to pay, you have to have austerity, the whole world will go under if you don't do this. And meanwhile, they get a big, fat banker bonus. They've taken the debts, the problems that should be theirs. They should have imploded their institutions. They should have taken them in receivership, canceled out the debt, fired the management. The resources of the bank should have been the depositors should have been protected. Only the depositors in America. All they had to do in America was to protect the depositors. The depositors were $4.5 to $6 trillion. Okay. What we find out in the whole financial reform regulation bill, which they said it was $3.3 trillion, well, it wasn't. It was $9 trillion of the Federal Reserve off balance sheet. They spent, we spent another $9 trillion. That's twice what they would have spent if they had just protected depositors. Now, bondholders would have been wiped out. Shareholders would have been wiped out. Okay? We would be on our way to coming out of this. Oh, we'd have real deflation. Gold would be $200 an ounce. Would be at mining cost. It would be $300 an ounce. Silver would be $5 an ounce. Oil would be $10 a barrel. Okay, but we'd be on our way to coming out of this. Real estate would have collapsed, and then people would have said, "Okay, here's the value. Okay, we can start from here." But no. We transferred the debt to Ireland, we transferred the debt to Great Britain, we transferred the debt to Greece, we transferred the debt to the United States, to the government. So that's why I'm surprised that people in Ireland, I'm surprised you guys don't vote out all the bums that voted for this and do what Iceland did, and that was, yeah, you guys are going to have to take a haircut. You're not going to get all your money back. That's the problem with fiat currency. People who control the currency can print the currency, in this case the euro, and they can funnel it out to whoever they want, but they can't just print the currency. We got to get people to give up some of their gross domestic product and give up some of their benefits and pay higher taxes, and we have to keep this fiat currency because we want to just create currency at will. When you have a credit card, people don't really realize it. This is why the banks want to hang on to this system. Okay, when you go to the gas station and you swipe your credit card, do you think you borrow money or do you think you create money? You don't borrow money. You create money. You create money and then you pay the bank back with interest. That's a great system, isn't it? I give you a plastic card, you go into debt, and then you pay me back the money that you created with interest. That's a great system. That's a fantastic system. Isn't that a great system? As long as you're the one issuing the card.
And that comes up, this comes up on the show, it's come up over the last few years, and repeatedly we always find there's so many people, don't understand or find it very difficult to grapple with that information, with that fact, the idea of the creation of money that didn't previously exist. I'll tap a keyboard and now it exists.
Money is loaned into, they call it printing money. I say all the time the euphemism for creating money is printing money. It is loaned into existence. And this is the problem. What they loan the money into existence, but they don't loan the interest payment into existence. And it works great. It works fantastic as long as you don't get into a situation where greed overtakes a common sense and you don't have any kind of quality controls, and they allowed the banks in America to basically our big export was toxic debt. And we have bellied up to all this debt, and now it's the bankers transferred the debt onto the government. Now the credit rating of the United States and the value of the dollar is going to be in question, which is the world's reserve currency. The dollar won't be the world's reserve currency in 5 years. It can't be. You can't print money to buy oil indefinitely and buy computer products and software and tennis shoes and clothing and furniture. You can't print money forever. And because the world's not going, they're going to say, hey, we want something for real. We want something in return. That's why gold is. When you come back to a 5,000-year history, they wanted to say gold and silver are commodities. No, they're not. They got a 5,000-year history. A track record is money. Even in Roman times, what did they do in Roman times when things started getting bad? They started debasing the currency. They started making the silver coin smaller. They actually had a coin in the Roman times towards the end of the empire where it was a copper slug in the middle and coated with silver. Sound familiar? Now we have a copper quarter coated in nickel. I mean, now we have a penny that used to be 100% copper or 96%, 95% copper, and now it's like 3% copper and the rest of it's zinc. It's unbelievable. They're debasing the currency. Why? Because the coins are too expensive relative to inflation. They're causing inflation. It's Milton Friedman, the Nobel Economics Prize winner. Monetary inflation is always and everywhere. Inflation is always and everywhere a monetary phenomenon. He said this, 74, 76? And that's what he was trying to say was, well, if we keep a lid on producing money, we won't have that much inflation. And he's right. But that's not human nature. Human nature is, oh, come on, Billy Bob, I've way overextended myself. You guys could just give us money at the Fed window. You can just, hand us out our loan at 0.0001%. Goldman Sachs got loans at 0.0001%. 0.0001%. It's unbelievable.
Insane.
0.000%.
And it's what people accept. Moving again back to the news for a moment here, just a couple of other questions that I want to ask you when I have you on the line. We touched on this, you mentioned this, and it comes back to stories like Anthony Weiner and stuff like that. Is the news, and I mean the mainstream obviously, the news, is it just entertainment now? I mean, this is a criticism I sometimes hear. People say, oh, the news is depressing. I don't want to be depressed. I don't want bad news. So is it now just a source of entertainment? Have we got an MTV culture, as it were, where people just really turn on CNN, turn on ABC, largely just for diversion for 30 minutes?
I think it's the Roman circus. I think Anthony Weiner is somebody who has fallen. It's like, you turn around to the crowd and you put thumbs up or thumbs down for the gladiator, and, Anthony Weiner got the thumbs down. And I think that this Casey Anthony, with her terrible, I don't know if you heard about it in America, she's allegedly killed her kid and ended up in a swamp somewhere, and they're trying her, and there's just hours and hours and hours in TV shows devoted to it. The news is depressing if you don't get on the right side of it. There's some people, if you get on the right side of something, there are some people that write me on my site and say, I've been buying gold at $400 an ounce, at $600 an ounce, at $1,000 an ounce. People who bought gold at $1,000 an ounce were called stupid. And now it's 1503 or something, and nothing goes straight up and straight down. I suspect that people buying at $1,500 in a couple of years, right now, if you somebody said, oh, I'm buying gold at $1,500 an ounce, I don't know what that is euro-wise. It's, I don't know, probably 1,000 euros an ounce or something.
Yeah, we're not that dissimilar. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So, I think people, it all comes. Let me tell you for your viewers, I'm going to come down to one thing. You know what all this is coming down to, financially speaking? You know what it's all boiling down to? What is money? What is it something that can be produced at will digitally to bail out just the people that they want to get bailed out, and then the little guys and the people that aren't are the chosen few, they lose their houses, they lose their jobs. What is money? That's what all this is coming down to. They're talking about having a gold standard in America, and boy, I'll tell you what, if they have a gold standard in America, they'll have a gold standard in Europe, they'll have a gold standard everywhere, which is, what does gold do? There's a thing on my site called How Do I Buy Gold and Silver? I do not sell gold and silver, but I had so many questions about it, I finally just wrote something so I could say, read my post on how to buy gold and silver, and I tell people, why to do it and how do you do it. And even Alan Greenspan wrote a piece in 1966. If you Google Greenspan in 1966, the year, you'll get Greenspan's piece. And basically what he says is gold, it protects the common individual, and silver to that, from the people who print money, who steal your wealth by inflation. That's how they do it. They steal your wealth by inflation. And gold stands as a guardian of that and protects the little guy. How do you divorce yourself from the European Monetary Union? How do you divorce yourself from the Central Bank of America, from the Federal Reserve? How do you protect yourself if you're holding euros or if you're holding dollars and they're printing crap loads of euro to bail out Spain and Greece and Portugal and whoever? How does that hurt the buying power? Eventually, the buying power goes kaput. How do you protect yourself? You can have land, you can have artwork, you can have gold, silver. It comes down to what is money. The people who do the euro want you to think the euro is money. What's it backed by? Nothing. We can just print all we want. I've long said that if the financial meltdown entailed, you got to give up a third of Ireland. Wait a minute. You want to be bailed out, Greece? Yeah, you need to give up half. All that coastline down there, you got to give that up. Portugal, you got to give up all your wine country there, and part of your coastline too. And your ports too. We like to have that. There would no way it would happen. If America, you got to give up. You got to give up half of Alaska. And Hawaii and part of Florida. There's no way. We'll just print money. What is money? That's the question that this is all coming down to. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's the simple.
Yeah, we hear that. We hear that on the show from time to time. And again, it's a key question. And again, it's amazing. More and more people are aware. But again, the people who are aware are the people who are getting their information online.
Well, and this is what I try to break things down. I do not write for people to trade an account, or I'm not Kramer here in America. So buy this, sell that. This is that. Well, if you want to do your homework and be in the stock market, I think it's just a bunch of people trying to pick other people's pockets, not really investing anymore. So, but the long and short of it is I try to break things down so normal people can understand it. Because when I started doing business deals, I thought, I don't understand this. What do you mean liquidity? What does this mean? And so I started doing reporting so common, regular people could understand what's going on. And that's what I like about, remember Johnny Cochran and O.J. Simpson? He came out and said, if it doesn't fit, about the gloves, if it don't fit, you must acquit. The simplicity of that is brilliant. It's utterly brilliant. And so I try to look for the brilliance in simplicity. And people want something, the takeaway. What's the takeaway here? Answer this question. What is money? How do you protect yourself? What is money? Well, how do you store wealth? Money has to do three really important things. It has to be a medium of exchange. Okay, dollars, euros, okay, check. It has to be valuable. Okay, right now they're valuable. And it has to be a store of value. That, no. Dollars, euros, no. Not a store of value because they're not paying high enough interest rates. In order for it to compensate for inflation in the United States is roughly 11% if you did it the way it was done in 1980. Well, then you need a 12 or 13 or 14% inflation rate, interest rate to keep up with inflation. Same thing in Euro. I don't know what in European, the monetary union is telling you what your inflation rate is. And there is some deflation in housing. Yes, that's correct. There's not all one or the other. But that's what it's going to come down to for your listeners. How do you protect yourself? Answer this question. What is money?
And that kind of leads me, because one of the last questions we always put our guests and yourself as well as we move into the last few minutes, and what can people really do themselves? And that's a twofold question, because first of all, the information you're giving out already, that's very important. But also, people who want to try and emulate what you yourself are doing. I mean, you talk about things like Bob's blog and stuff, people pitching in. But on the same level, people can also have their voice online. Would you recommend that people follow that route? Would you recommend that people, rather than just passively receiving, that people get out there?
I love it. I put comments on all the time. I don't put stuff like on, I hate, I hate so-and-so people, or I hate so-and-so is some expletive or something. I don't put any of that kind of crap on. Sometimes I put a cuss word on. But I try to make it so I want people to have, if you can criticize the hell out of me. If you have sometimes I say, I didn't think of that. You're right. I'll change that. Or that's a good point. Well taken, or whatever. But yes, I want people to, I want to engage people. I got some really smart people, smarter than me, reading my site. There's some really smart people reading my site. I'm not
Everybody
kidding.
everyone who comes to our side is smarter than me, so that's fair enough. I can appreciate where you're coming from with that.
But
yeah,
people
it is
should
important.
have a voice,
Yeah,
and
you
people
wanna hear
should.
people, yeah.
Right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I'm saying, yeah, but that's what you're saying. You really want to hear back from people and them to have a voice and participate.
Correct. And when people talk about protecting themselves, well, there are lots of sites out there. Because I'm not a gold or silver site, although I believe everybody should have some gold and silver. Although, for some people on the lower end of the spectrum, maybe they should go out and buy themselves a set of tires. Maybe they should fill up their pantry. Maybe they should fix their house and make sure their windows are sealed for the winter, and that they have some extra food because it'll never be cheaper. Not because there won't be any food, because it won't be cheaper. Because I think inflation is going to be insidious, and that's going to be the theme for a generation. Inflation until we ultimately get answer this question: what is money? Because inflation is insidious. That the money changers have to have inflation. The European Union has to have inflation for it to work. It has to have inflation. They say they don't want inflation. They say they want to target inflation. No, they want inflation. It has to inflate the way it works, but in this case, inflation and the amount of money being created has gone crazy out of control. So, people should protect themselves. And there's all kinds of things you could do, but it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some people say, well, I've got $10,000. Should I buy, X amount of this and that? No, if all you have is $10,000, or that would be roughly 7,500 euros, no, don't buy gold and silver. Don't. Buy yourself a set of tires. Get yourself some food. Make sure you have some, money. Maybe buy yourself 10 silver coins or something, or 1 ounce of gold. But that's it. Because people have to be in a position where they can. It's a store of value. It's not something that you'll have to change in 4 months. Oh, I need this money. Well, anyway.
Yeah, okay. Predictions. The future for twofold question. USAWatchdog.com, what does the future hold for the website? And then in terms of the news stories, you're in a great position. You've got a lot of information. You're a fact digger. Facts are your lifeblood. Predictions with some of the stories we've talked about. So first of all, the site. What's next? What's your agenda? What's your plan? What's happening?
Well, I hope to get venture capital someday. Nothing on the internet world. I've known so much about the internet. It's not funny. I trademarked the name USA Watchdog. I hired a real guy out of New York to help me. A real guy, not a cheeky baby. Somebody who knows what they're doing. And if everybody wants, the first thing the guy, I knew he was for real when the first thing he said to me, he says, if you think that you can get on the internet and make $1 million like in 6 months, I don't want to help you. He says, you might be able to make $1 million or €1 million or £1 million, 3 or 4 or 5 years from now. But, it's going to be a lot of work, and you've got to create content. So what I do on the internet is I create content. I'm a page rank 5 out of 10. When I talk about that, that's Larry Page of Google, who ranks you for, value and trust. Some of the stuff I do ranks right up there with the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, ABC News, CNN, UK, Daily Mail. I'm trying to name some stuff over in your neck of the woods too. Financial Times. That's a very hard vertical to be in. And so what I do is I create content. I write original stuff and to put my take on it, and I try to back it up and make it so, have you thought of this? One of the things I wrote about the Greek thing is that they're all like, oh, you got to do this austerity. You got to. Well, wait a minute. Hold on a minute. They're socialist. You didn't realize they were a socialist government and they have a lot of social programs? You didn't realize people retire? Many people retire at 50? You didn't realize that they had a lot of debt? They made a bad loan. They loaned them way too much money, and they're still loaning them money. That's the thing. These tranches of money that are coming are more loans. They're putting even more burden on the Greek people, and that's the same thing that happened in Ireland. That's what Michael Core was talking about. Jim Core, who was great. I put him on my site. He did a video, and he was great. I think in when's your next elections? Your next parliamentary elections?
Well, we're just after them, so if they run their full course, they're years away. But the question mark is, will they run their full course? But we've recently had a change of the guard, as it were, but not in a drastic or a way that would. So
you're still in this austerity program, and you're not going to do any. So you're not going to do any defaults.
Yeah,
See, I
there's
just think you
no-
take your medicine, you tell them, forget it, we're not going to do this to our kids. We're done.
Yeah.
And I think and that's the same thing with our politicians, the same damn way. I mean, in America, they talk about how they were fighting over $60 billion in cuts, which ended up being $350 million, according to the Washington Post. It was $60 billion, then it was $38 billion. They settled on $38 billion, and in reality, it was $355 million. Okay, but nobody said a word on either side of the party. Democrats and Republicans over here, the Labor Party and the Conservative Party over here, Democrats, Republicans, about the $127 billion forgiveness given to Bank of America. $127 billion in questionable and things that could have been bought back. And incidentally, Bank of America was just lost a court case where they had to buy back $8 billion of these mortgage-backed securities. And remember, these are derivatives, and they were equal in rating to a U.S. Treasury. So, a few years later, they say, oh, yeah, they're worthless. Whoa, that's fraudulent. You sold me something with a risk-free return. That's a technical term. Risk-free return. Risk-free. And then a couple of years later, you tell me they're no good? They're sour? They're toxic? Oh, no. Give us our money back. It's warranty. It's under laws here called warranties and representations. You sold me something that was equal to a treasury that paid a couple of percent. Well, why are they buying that? Why wouldn't they just buy treasuries? Because it paid a couple of percent higher. So it has to be warranties and representations here in America. I'm sure there's something in Ireland. It has to be what you say it is. Well, if you're saying that something equal to a treasury is now worthless, no, that wasn't what you said it was. So they would be forced to buy back $127 billion worth of stuff, but that was forgiven by Tim Guyton, their Treasury Secretary, right after the first of the year. Not a word by either party. Not a word. I mean, you want to save $127 billion? That's a lot of money, even in America. Not a word from Democrats or Republicans. Not a word. And your guys, the same thing, I'm sure is happening over there. They get campaign money. They get special perks and things from the banking elite, and they tell them, oh, these things are so screwed up. If you don't do this, the whole world will implode. That's the situation they got us into. So now they tell us, oh, the whole world will implode. Well, you all ought to be fired. Bonuses, talent.
Bonuses, yeah.
Yeah, everybody gets bonuses. You're kidding me. The Royal Bank of Scotland should have been taken under. They should have been taken in receivership, and everybody at top management should have been fired. And they should have only protected, you'd have been better off by protecting your depositors. That's your capital base. That's capital formation. What we have is debt formation, and it's being transferred to the governments. So you're going to have governments fail. That's what you're going to have. What you're going to have is not the governments fail. You're going to have the currency fail. And they don't want to let this euro currency go. I mean, they're going to keep it floating at all costs. What Trichet just got an award over there for, furthering the union. You got a award for what? For enslaving, large portions of the European Union. That's your, that's your big accomplishment. By letting things go crazy out of control, letting these guys take insane risk, and not letting them go under. See, that's the only regulation we need. Oh, you made a mistake? You're bankrupt. Your assets are going to go to somebody competent. You're an idiot fool. But no. Oh, no. Well, they got to stay in power. And I love this part. They get bonuses. I love it. It's a great system. It's like the credit card. Who would give that up?
Oh, yeah, I mean, they're rewarded for what they've done. Yeah.
Yes, they're rewarded for it.
Some should just do jail time.
Oh, in the United States for the savings and loan crisis, they successfully prosecuted 1,000 financial elites. I think so far, 3 guys in Florida have gone to jail. And this is 40, 50 times bigger than the savings and loan crisis.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And nobody has gone to jail, and they've gotten huge bonuses. This is unbelievable. This is unbelievable. This is fascist government. This is business taking control of government. And so this is happening. This is a worldwide theme. This is going on in your country too.
It tells you who is in control. It tells you who is part of the elite, who is part of the inner circle.
The bankers, the money changers. And look at this thing going on with NATO in Libya. That's just unbelievable. I mean, what? All of a sudden, we got to kick him out of power. He had Lockerbie, fall down on the in Scotland, and now we're just getting around to kicking him out of power. What? Right now? Oh, what happened? We loaned the Bank of Libya. The United States, the Federal Reserve, loaned the State Bank of Libya, or a big bank in Libya. I think it's the State Bank in Libya. They loaned them money during the financial crisis. Did you know that?
No.
And now we're attacking them? You're kidding me, right? That's a fact. We loaned them money. We did. It came out in the congressional hearing. Yes.
But again, there are parallels for that too. I mean, when you look back, there's so much a parallel with maybe the USA befriending someone, training someone, helping someone, and then a decade or two later, it's no longer beneficial to play things that way, and it's suddenly somebody is the enemy of all freedom, etc., etc. So there are parallels all over the place, unfortunately.
There are, but the overarching theme for your listeners is going to be that money question. I think they should do something to protect themselves, and if it's nothing more than getting their house in order and getting their lives in order, and I don't know how many people drive cars in Ireland and America. Everybody has a damn car. And so,
same here. Yeah, everyone drives every short journey. Yourself, a couple of final questions. We're in the last few minutes. It's been a great pleasure to talk to you. Your work methods. What do you enjoy? I mean, you enjoy. Are you writing in the mornings, in the nighttime? Are you a night owl?
I'm kind of a night owl.
Work?
I'm kind of a night owl. I'm actually on my mom's 122-acre farm in Missouri, in the center part of the country here in America, and I wrote my latest thing about the Greek thing. And, of course, it happened so fast they had a vote. They have another vote today. I guess they're going to implement this crazy thing. I don't suspect this, even though if they pass it, they'll get the money. But it's not going to go on long term. There's no way that the people who voted for this stay in power in Greece. And I think ultimately they will default. And anyway, the long and short of it is, I was out working on my mom's farm, weed eating, cutting, grass, doing some stuff. And I started thinking, didn't these bankers know? Didn't they know that these guys retire? They hear all this, they retire at 50. Oh, they have all these social programs. Well, it's a socialist government. You didn't know that when you were loaning them money? And they loaned a tiny country like Greece an insane hundreds of billions of dollars. And this is partly in part and parcel for them to get into the European Union. But they loan them crazy amounts of money, and then they're like surprised that they can't pay it back. And they're going to wring out every single a penny that they can get out of them. And it's just, insane. They should be taking their lumps for making a bad loan. The bankers have, it's just like, we've screwed this up so bad that the whole world's going to implode. And it's just, they should be taking their lumps for making bad loans. You didn't have good loan practices. That you should have never loaned them as much money as you loaned them. Never. I mean, they have people that, teams of people, at the banks that will take a look at a country's finances and what their expenses are and what their expenditures are in the future and what their debt ratio is in the future and how much, what reasonable amount of, income, they can produce, or how much confiscation, they call that revenue in America, they call it revenue taxes. And it's just nothing more than confiscation. How much can the people give? They knew all that. They knew it all. And if they didn't, they should have. And the bankers should be taking big write-offs, and they're not. But anyway, I thought of all this stuff when I was out working on the farm, and I came in, and it was one of those things that just went easy together. Sometimes things don't go very easy together. Stuff I write probably takes 5, 6, 7 hours. I might have 8 or 9.
Yeah, as you say, that your work method would be just to settle down for it and keep at it for that length of time. And
I have to have an idea, and then I have to have the research. My wife says, "How far along are you with your piece?" I said, "Have you written anything?" I said, "No, but I'm halfway done." And what I mean by that is, I might look at 15 or 20 articles, and I might reference 3 or 4. Then I get my whole thing shaped up where I can get the whole thing shaped up, and then, boom, then I sit down and write it. But before I write it, I have to have that idea, that nug of an idea. And, it's one of the things I did at Networks, was all I did was come up with ideas. So anyway, my work ethic is, I just take a look at what's going on, and try to make some sense out of it so people can read it and pull it all together and go, oh, I get it. Because a lot of the news of what's going on, it's so complicated that you have to kind of pull it together, and so-and-so said this, and so-and-so said that, and here's a link, and so-and-so said this, but didn't they know this, and didn't they know that, and the ultimate end is this. so people can get it without reading, 10, 15 stories like I'm doing, and then go, oh, I get it. That's what I try to get people to do, is to get it.
Are you ever motivated by what's not being said in the mainstream? I mean, you've explained some of your work processes, but do you ever look at the mainstream reporting of something and think to yourself, ooh,
God.
Why are they not saying that?
Oh, yes, I do, and I skewer. That's a beautiful thing. See, in mainstream media, you can't, come on the air and say, God, USA Today wrote this idiotic story about. Don't they, I wrote a story. This is on my site about USA Today, and I think the headline said one thing, but the story said completely different. It was about a recovery. Basically, it was about so and so, such and such recovery is happening, and then in the story, in their own story, and I even pointed out, I said, I've done no research for this. I just merely read their own story. Their headline doesn't match the story they wrote. Their own work doesn't match what they say. And I just skewered them for that, because I think a lot of people read the headline and go, oh, this is good news. If you don't read it carefully, you think, we're having a recovery. No, we're not. No, we're not. There's no recovery. Finally, the mainstream media, things have gotten so bad here in America. There's a magazine cover out recently saying, what recovery? And I've been saying that for months. There is no recovery. This is not a recovery. This is not a recovery in the real sense. And that things aren't getting better. They're going to get worse. And they are, because I want people to know. I don't want people to go out and buy a new car. I don't want people to go out and buy a house. I think over in America they're buying all these foreclosures, and I think they say, oh, we're getting a great price. And I think they're getting them at the new retail price. That's what I think. I think in 3 or 4 years they're going to be paying. They've paid about what the house is worth. That's what I think. I think real estate goes down another 40% from here. Seriously. Yeah. I mean, they're holding rates at absurdly low levels. I mean, in America, a 30-year loan is, 4.5, 5%, less than 5%? That's crazy time. If they had to put the debt out there, our Treasury debt, at par and said, we'll pay until we get some takers of this debt, the rates would be 9%. Seriously. And what's going to happen to real estate? My dad used to say, what's the difference, a $150,000 house at 10% or a $300,000 house at 5%? I'll tell you what the difference is. If you're buying a house, you want interest rates to skyrocket. People go, huh? What? Absolutely. Because you don't buy a loan, you buy real estate. And as rates go up, the prices will come down. So you want interest rates to be at 10, 12, 15% before you buy a house. You want them to go sky high. Then you'll be getting all house, and you'll have a high interest rate, but so what? The $300,000 house will be a $150,000 house. Okay, so what? Because people in America live on this one question, and I think people in the rest of the world do too. This is the question the bankers want you to ask all the time. What are the payments? That's the dumbest question you can ever ask. What are the payments? You want to know what the value is. What's the cost? How much is it? What's the value? Am I getting a good value? Forget the payments.
And it is what motivates people. It is the thing, because people immediately bring it into their daily, weekly, monthly budgets, and they don't get beyond what are the payments. Well,
a friend of mine said to me one time, he says, there's plenty of people out there that you'll say to them, hey, you can pay me $50 a week for something, or you could pay me $150 a month. And they'll say, I'll pay you $50 a week. So,
Okay, Greg, a pleasure. Your passion is extraordinary. I mean, in 2 years doing the show, we've been blessed with amazing guests, but rarely with somebody who really spits hellfire and has such passion and a great knowledge base for what you're doing. USAWatchdog.com is where people need to go to find out more of what you're doing. As you say on the website, analyzing the news to give you a clear picture of what's really going on. You definitely embody that. Wishing you success, continued success with USAWatchdog.com. Hoping to get you back. We'll have to have you back.
Oh, call me anytime. Email me anytime.
We will. Yeah, we want to find as all of these stories unfold in the months ahead. There's going to be so much to talk about, so much to think about, and it certainly would be very beneficial for anyone to get your take on everything that's happening. Greg Hunter, a pleasure to talk to you today. Thank you for joining us on the.
Thanks for having me on.
And that brings us to the end of another Irish Side of the Moon. That was Greg Hunter of USAWatchdog.com. Check that out. Again, a lot of debt, finance, based stories in there. I'm just looking down the headlines in the most recent week. Gloves come off in debt ceiling fight. Bad unemployment report tangles debt deal. The weekly wrap up, of course. People fiddling as the country burns. Plunging fuel prices will not last. Good website, usawatchdog.com. Very glad to have that on my radar. Don't forget to check out Irish Side of the Moon on Facebook. We have our own list of stories there. Taking Back Our Food. Well, these are links rather than our own stories. We're not yet at the stage where we're investigating our own stuff, but maybe someday as this project continues to grow. Taking Back Our Food. This is what's this? Local council news. Devon, Barack Obama. The US is running out of time on debt deal. July brings eye-popping burst in UFO sightings, and Siobhan comments on that. Crisis-prone summer as EU officials go on vacation. Lovely. Activists pave way for thousands of new community radio stations, and again people responding to that as well. We've got loads of people down there: Paul, David, Adrian, more from Paul, or maybe a different Paul, I'm not looking at the last names. Stefan, Neil, Sophia, all these people, thank you very much for joining us on Facebook, facebook.com Irish Side of the Moon. Don't forget you can join that group. Also check us out, we have a blog where we archive the shows, irishsideofthemoon.blogspot.com. They're on iTunes. You can find us on Twitter as well. Irish Side of the Moon is up there, Irish Side of Moon. Get our Twitter feeds. Show 79, Tommy was at the microphone, and the guest was Lionel Fanthorpe, talking about his diversified life and the paranormal. This guy, you really have to hear him to believe him. He's worked at various times as a journalist, a teacher, television presenter, author, lecturer. He has authored or co-authored more than 250 books. About 180 of those are fiction, science fiction, supernatural. They're novels. Many of them are on Christian themes, and many of them are compilations of Fortean phenomena, strange, naturally occurring phenomena that science cannot yet define or explain. That is show number 79 in our archive. And you can go to LionelFanthorpe.com. There's a hyphen there between Lionel and Fanthorpe. LionelFanthorpe.com for more information. That was guest 79, show 79. Tommy was at the microphone. Tommy will be back again in a couple of weeks with Betty Martini. The next show, I think 81, we're going to run with Maurice Cotterill, author of Future Science. Future Science explains how electricity and magnetism work together to produce the force of gravity, and in so doing reveals the underlying science behind Newton's equation that he tried in vain to uncover. This book explains how the 28 spinning sun cycle regulates fertility in females, how it determines human behaviour and personality, and how it causes global warming and global cooling. The author returns to the beginning of time to explain how the universe began, and reveals the first ever pictures of God and Jesus decoded from the treasures of ancient sun-worshipping civilizations. Future Science, we're talking about that book and talking about Maurice Cotterill's work on show number 81. That would be right, yes. And then Tommy returns for 82. And then we have a block, final 2 shows to finish out the round, the 10 for this season. This project is done in seasons of 10. And I think Shane and Gabriel are each taking a show. That seems to be what's happening at the moment, lining that up to bring us to the end of our summer 2011 block. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Irish Side of the Moon. If you've downloaded the show, then everything is at a conclusion, and thank you for your time. If you're listening on a radio station, please stay tuned. After the closing theme, we'll be diving into our archive as is customary, and you'll hear a classic excerpt from golden Irish Side of the Moon. Maybe we're not old enough yet to say that, but yes, the golden age of Irish Side of the Moon. So yes, we'll be diving into the archive to bring us to the top of the hour. In either case, however you've found us, however you've listened to us, I hope you'll make your way back to us again. I hope you found this worthwhile. If you have found it worthwhile, please share it on if you're online, and let people know, spread the word, and think about all this stuff. Think about it. Are these people right? Are they wrong? Think about it. That's what we're doing behind the scenes, and we encourage you to do the same as well as we complete this journey. Thank you, sincerely. Thank you for paying attention to what we're doing in droves and responding to us. It's very flattering. Irish Side of the Moon, this is Michael, signing off until the next time. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
We are Irish Side of the Moon. Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.
I still have a dream.
This is just a ride. We can change it anytime we want. It's only a choice. No effort, no work, no job, no savings of money. A choice right now between fear and love.
Freedom of information, personal empowerment. The Irish Side of the Moon.